Welcome to the Digital Ascent podcast. This is episode 0002. In this episode, we talk about gaming subscriptions, launchers, and digital rights. We hope you enjoy.
Alrighty, so here we all are. And
Here we all are.
Yeah, everybody's ready,
Yep,
right?
Right here.
Everybody
yeah.
did all the research, right?
Wait, research?
15 minutes of it, sure did.
15 minutes of it. Love it. Okay. So this is going to be raw. Okay, that's fine. So this week we're taking it a bit lighter, less, I won't say less information heavy because my research took me down some rabbit holes, but we're going to go with gaming platforms and how many there are and what does gaming look like now, and is the future subscriptions, right? We're also going to look at what our rights are as gamers, and then get into some DRM at the end, so digital rights management, which are sort of hand in hand. And you'll have to forgive me, I am on the tail end of not feeling well, so I sound a little nasally, but that's why. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're starting with. And I guess we'll get started with the multitude of gaming services.
If you guys don't mind, I'd actually like to start out talking about what's going on with PlayStation, right? Because PlayStation had their PS Now, which was their subscription service. And it's a pretty cool service. You know, you paid a few bucks a month. You get access to PlayStation games. If you own a PlayStation, it's the only way that you're going to play PlayStation games, unless you can figure out how to get the emulators going. It has some drawbacks. You do need a PlayStation controller to play all the PlayStation games because of the touchpad. Some of them will work without the touchpad, but it does seem like it's pretty hit and miss in my personal experience. And if you come to a point where you need that touchpad and all you have is an Xbox controller, then you're out of luck. Now, the interesting thing is that they're rebranding, right? They're setting up a new service. It's called PS Plus. And I, as a subscriber to PS Now, should probably know. I should say, as I was a subscriber to PS Now, as I am now a subscriber to PS Plus, I personally should know a little bit more about what that means for people who are PS Now and or PS Plus subscribers, however you want to, I guess, discuss that or just describe that. But I really don't. And honestly, I wish I had spent my time researching what the heck that means for me. And I'm really hoping, as we're talking about this, one of you guys is going to happen to know a little bit more than me.
So I think that's going to be Jordyn. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to hop in here just really quickly, and I want to just define a few of the points that we've just kind of hit on so far, because there are a couple different platforms I think we're going to kind of switch between or discuss, and I just want to make sure that we're pacing ourselves as we go through. So Shaun, and Brent were talking on I'm losing the term now. What is like a Steam or an Epic, right? Like a
launcher. Yeah, like a client.
I think that the more appropriate phrasing in this case would be digital storefront, because at the end of the day, it's really a commerce center and a license provisioning center.
For the sake of just consistency, the client or our listeners would probably be more centered with the term, just game launcher, right? So you have your game launchers.
That's true. Yeah.
And just to simplify it, right? And I just want to be clear. I'm sure we will talk about, game launchers and exactly what Matt was talking about, digital storefronts. But we're really going to hit the ground running here. And I'm sure in just a few moments, I'm holding us up with subscription services. That's the big thing I think that we're going to be kind of hammering in here. So we're not attacking Steam. We're not attacking Steam. We're not attacking, like an EA player or anything like that. But we are, we're trying to define those things, discuss those things, and then try to figure out, hey, are these, for the gaming industry as a whole, for the player? Are these the best things that, that we have planned for us as far as looking to the future? So I don't know that I explained that in the most efficient way, but I did just want to break that down or try to make that distinction before we went any further. So I apologize for the awkward kind of insertion there.
No, you're fine, man. So what I would say is the current event would be the conversion from PS Now to PS Plus. And so that's sort of a console-based discussion primarily. And then we'll get into all of them later on and what the subscriptions look like. And, like you said, kind of diving into what does that mean for us? What does that mean for the future of gaming?
Yeah.
And how do we really feel about that? Because me, because we've had some offline conversations and how I feel about it. So it should get pretty spicy. So let's focus on PS Now. That's what I want to start with.
Yeah, so the big shift I think that Matt was talking about earlier that would be in the industry that everybody's kind of that would be tracking these things would be kind of the mind of is the big subscription shift that PlayStation just made. So previously, the big seller for PS Now, which was the previous name, right, was, hey, this is the Xbox Live of PlayStation.
You get access to Sony exclusives. It's the
Exactly.
only way that you get access to Sony exclusives without paying $300 plus for a console plus the video game itself. And
this is
some of the,
yeah.
it's really, I really, it's very frustrating. I wish it was a better service, and I hate saying that, but I wish it was a better service. But
that sounds like they're holding you at gunpoint, though.
Well, this
They're
is
saying,
what Matt's
you can
getting
only
at.
get this. Yeah.
Well, hold on. But it wasn't an option. See, I look at it a different way. It wasn't an option, 5 years ago for me. So, they could just not offer anything at all.
Right. This is, I just want to throw out there.
There's no gut here.
What Matt is pointing out is this is PS Now was one of the subscription service that was Sony's answer to Xbox's like cloud streaming. So if you paid, Matt, what was the price tag on that? Was it $10 or 15?
Okay, so PS Now, I purchased a year, which came in, I think it was $60 a year or $10 a month. And I looked at it and I said, shoot, I'm gonna play God of War. I'm gonna play the latest God of War. That's probably worth $60 right there. And then I'll probably work through The Last of Us. I haven't done it yet, but I probably will. And maybe I'll knock out a Drake or two. All of these contingent upon the fact that I can get my hands on a PS controller that has the little touchpad, or the games don't require the touchpad, which I may not know until 20 hours into the game. I'm very salty about it.
Yeah, the reason I totally get that, Matt. The reason I had asked was I just wanted to make sure. So you paid $60 a year, and again, this was Sony's answer to the cloud streaming on the Xbox side. So Matt is primarily a PC player. He does not own a PlayStation. PS Now is great for somebody like Matt because he can access a certain amount of PlayStation titles from his computer, and he doesn't have to download any of them. He can navigate to the PlayStation website, and he is streaming these things. I'm
sorry, man. I will hop in and say on one side it is so good for travel. I need any networked device. Oh, I have a phone. Well, I don't actually think the phone works in this case, but it does work for Game Pass, right? But
Yes.
I take a laptop and a controller, and bang, I'm playing. I'm playing, AAA games no matter where I am.
Yeah, and you don't. That's the
like,
great thing about streaming is you don't need to download them. So Matt is essentially logging on to a server, sitting somewhere on Sony's side, and the game is being ran somewhere physically away from Matt. You know what I mean? But
I imagine it's a virtualized PS5 or PS4.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a I'd almost said make believe PlayStation, but that terminology wouldn't have been right.
To some degree, it's kind of, man. To some degree, it might as well be a make believe PlayStation. It's Somebody has
Exactly.
programmed some hardware to make it look like it's a PlayStation 2.
Yep.
As far as like the game is concerned, the game thinks it's running on a PlayStation.
And this is and I want to kind of like segue into like what Matt was expressing of not understanding what was going on, between the subscription shifts. I'm going to be very upfront with you, Matt. There's a part of me that doesn't completely understand myself. However, all right, now don't be frightened because I'm hopefully I can give you some like points of reassurance here or understanding of what this service is. But part of my confusion is because I don't like, as I've looked at this, subscription tier layout multiple times. I've got it in front of me right now. All right. Now I know that they had, Sony had 2 or 3, subscriptions that were all just rolled into different things so that PlayStation could fit this new, feature and offer, feature offering, right, to its audience. This again is to compete with Xbox's, digital cloud, library, right? The idea there is a lot of, and this isn't something that's very specific to Game Pass. But Xbox has been fantastic about backwards compatibility and just making sure that games preservation as a whole, I'm gonna star that right there. We're gonna come back to that later. Is something that they are contributing to. So what I mean by that is they're taking titles from 4 or 5 generations ago on the Xbox side and making sure that we as gamers can still play those games 10, 15 years later. Right, on different hardware that the game wasn't built on. And Xbox has been making those strides for the better part of the last decade. And so a lot of the new bells and whistles in these subscriptions that Sony has been kind of toting around include a lot of backwards compat titles for PlayStation. So no longer, is the offering, for PS Now, it was strictly PS4 titles at its launch. And then I think that, expanded into not just, PlayStation 4 titles, but a wide range of PS4, PS3, and then it expanded again. And now with this new service, the titles range a lot of different generations for PlayStation, not just a handful, right?
So Jordy, let me stop you here
we'll
for a second.
Go ahead and pause there.
Yeah. So what you're saying is the PS Now versus the PS Plus is part of the differentiation between the two is that you get more backwards compatibility.
Yes.
Okay.
You're getting.
I wanted to clarify.
So that's the big one. That's the big one for PS Plus.
I'm looking at it now. I think it depends on what tier you're in. It specifically looks like.
Oh no, there's tiers.
Oh, so this suffers from what I personally consider to be the branding nightmare that starts to occur.
It's a branding nightmare. Yes, it's a branding nightmare.
We have PlayStation Plus Essential, PlayStation Plus Extra, PlayStation Plus Premium, and it looks like Essential would be useless to me. I don't actually know what you get here. 2 downloadable games a month. I mean, that might.
This is literally just your online. That's that online pass to play with your friends. Right. You can party up in a lobby with people.
It's still like hold on. If I don't pay that $10 a month, I can't go shoot baddies with my buddies.
Oh, absolutely not. There's nothing new about this if you're a console owner.
I know.
There's nothing new about this.
I know. I used to have an Xbox. I just, I figured that those days were over. All right. Okay,
yeah. Here's the warning for everybody. Matt's an old timer. All right.
Yeah. I last time I was synced up, it was the 360. No.
Yeah, actually, the same thing rings true for Shaun too. Anyways, Matt, please continue.
All right, so it looks like you get the extra. You get you got to pay the $10 to get online with your friends.
Yeah,
and then an extra $5 you get adds a catalog of up to 400 of the most enjoyable games of PS4 and PS5 games. I'm laughing right now because I'm going, how do you quantify most enjoyable? Like that
seems like a really subjective term.
That feels like you think that that's a claim that requires a metric, and I don't think that you can metricize most enjoyable.
You're exactly right, Matt. And I think to their point, it's all going to be stuff that was exclusive, right? To play. When you think about the PlayStation brand, maybe not exclusive, but stuff that you would tie to that PlayStation brand, stuff that was successful to the PlayStation name over the last 20 years or however long they've been making, 20 plus years that PlayStation has been making games. It's going to be the bangers throughout the last 20 years. So the funny thing about it, though, is not all of those games are downloadable. Some of those games are only accessible through cloud streaming because Sony has not mastered the art of emulation. And I'm throwing that out as an uneducated jab, but I know that Xbox has had this figured out for a long time because of their parent company, Microsoft. It has not been a problem for them. So this is not me being mean or unfair to Sony. I'm just offering a very lighthearted explanation as to why some of these games are restricted to cloud streaming.
Well, there's a big technical difference there too, though, because traditionally, anyways, Microsoft has developed consoles that are more akin to a standard consumer desktop computer.
Exactly right. Yep.
Than Sony has. Sony has always kind of gone against the grain with their consoles, and they've built very specific hardware for gaming that is usually very, very different than your consumer PC. And they're now paying the price for it and kind of customer loyalty in terms of backwards compatibility, to where Microsoft can turn around and say, well, you know, we've been building essentially a computer this entire time, all the way since the original Xbox. And now we can emulate without any, you know, huge amount of hardware increase, especially cost increase. We can emulate that right on our console, in addition to being able to stream some of these things. So that's really the big difference there. I don't want to get too deep into that because it's highly technical, but that is kind of the gist of that. That ties into your argument there. And I think it's safe to say that, back to, you know, PlayStation Now versus PlayStation Plus, especially the premium package, because you got premium, extra, and essential. The premium, I would say any of the tiers, the person that's going to get the best bang for their buck, regardless, is going to be a PlayStation console owner.
Yeah,
absolutely. The only way that the premium even comes into play for someone like me that doesn't own a PlayStation console, and the same for someone like Matt, is going to be that premium tier. And then the only reason we're going to even be looking at that is for the exclusivity of the Sony titles that happen to be in that cloud streaming service, like Uncharted, like God of War.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I actually don't think that's correct. It looks very specifically like the extra tier is going to include the blockbuster hits. It explicitly says that the extra tier is going to contain at launch Death Stranding, God of War, Marvel Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Mortal Kombat 11, and Returnal. If you read the close fine print, it looks specifically like Premium has its PS3, PS2, OG PlayStation, and PSP. So if you want to pay the extra $3 it is for the Premium there, if you do it on a monthly basis, or it looks like maybe $20 a year or something like that. It looks like it's going to get you access to some of the older stuff. It looks like the PlayStation Extra is only going to give you access to current gen. So, I guess
you're
my
exactly right, Matt.
Yeah, my argument is Extra's best bang for buck.
My understanding was, and I don't know if this is ever clarified anywhere. Maybe you guys have read other things, but my understanding was, in terms of cloud streaming to the PC, it was premium only.
Yes, I believe you're correct there, Brent. I think that what we got mixed up was, I think the only difference between the premium and the extra, or one of the only differences, was they were tying that backwards compatibility, you know, those OG titles.
Yeah, we're talking a lot of different. There's a lot of different points here, and this is why this shift is so controversial, is because it is not very clearly written, really anywhere, in my opinion, line for line, what is and isn't in some of these tiers, especially in comparison to PlayStation Now, and especially for the PC consumer that would be looking at this service. At least that's my opinion.
And here I think you're very correct. And I'm going to kind of shift us in a in a different angle here, right? And I'm going to shift over to Game Pass for just a moment here, just to compare the two services, okay? So when we look at the type of, when I'm looking at not that I'm a big market guy or a big industry share observer, anything like that, but one of the things that makes me really happy about Game Pass is that it is, and I'm throwing out there that I'm very biased towards Xbox anyway, so there's that disclaimer before I start shoveling any of their stuff towards you, okay? But Game Pass is very easy to understand, okay? If you want, just your basic, access to the library and you're just a casual console player, well, then you have Game Pass and that is it, right? If you are a hardcore player and you want, the library on your Xbox, on your console and your PC, well, then you have Game Pass Ultimate and that will give you both libraries. And then there's separate, Game Pass PC version for if you are just a PC player. So, Xbox is really trying to brand towards that. We're an ecosystem, not just a console platform. We don't care what platform you're on. We're agnostic. Join our little, party over here, right? And if you navigate to their site, it's very simple. Like there is no, the only difference between, regular Game Pass and Game Pass Ultimate on either side, whether you're on console or PC, is what library you have access to. If you have regular Game Pass, you have access to libraries on console. And if you have Ultimate, you have access to console titles and PC titles. And that's the big distinguisher. And now Xbox is really starting to add in some of those new features. Cloud streaming has been a thing. So I think they, very similar to, Sony, they tie, I think the cloud streaming, I may not be right on this. I'm not sure. I don't know that Xbox ties the cloud streaming to the Ultimate subscription.
Yeah, they do. It's into
they
the
do.
Ultimate
Okay,
subscription.
so
yeah, and you can access it via web browser, and it works great.
Absolutely, yes. The cloud
It's
streaming
very
on the
impressive.
Xbox side works. And man, I want to throw out here that you're
very
adding
nice.
that out. Like Xbox is having their guys, they're constantly testing and adding features to this, program. I've been a part of Xbox's like xCloud or cloud streaming, platform since it was in its alpha. Like I'm going to go ahead and toot that horn there. Like I helped to alpha test that, platform. And what we see now as consumers is not what, I mean, it's great now. And they've pushed out a lot of new, updates and like, server side, like upgrades to kind of enhance the streaming process on stuff that's not necessarily running in consoles. It's just post-processing stuff, like FPS boosts and cloud technical shenanigans and stuff, just to keep the game smooth and stuff like that. But it's a phenomenally, smooth experience, I guess, I'll throw that out there. But everything, it's plug and play. I feel like with Xbox, like I still feel like we've talked about this for 20 minutes and I'm not trying to be difficult, but there is still a little bit of confusion for me on the PlayStation side. And this is supposed to be a service that mirrors the Xbox subscription. It's not supposed to be a direct competitor, mind you, but they restructured their subscription service to match what Xbox was putting out there. And there's a little bit of this that confuses me, like the different amounts of checkboxes here and the fine print changes for these 3 tiers. And maybe I am just being difficult. I don't know. It's the use of ease.
So to summarize, what I'm hearing is, and that's what I've been doing this whole time, is listening. Because honestly, I don't really care about PlayStation.
Sure,
That's my own personal
you're
bias.
Truly you're pretty
straightforward.
biased, Shaun. Yeah,
I don't care about PlayStation,
or unbiased,
which is why I
I
let
should
you
say.
run with this
Not
one.
biased. Yeah.
So the problem is, from your point of view, from what you've dug into, the simplicity isn't as developed there as Xbox Game Pass in comparison to PS Plus. The subscription service, not really sure what you're getting, and doesn't function maybe as well because it's not been as refined. Would that
Yes.
be an accurate summarization
That
of
is,
what you're...
yeah, that's pretty fair. Essentially, both services, you are paying money, and in some way, shape, or form, you are being offered a digital library, varying to, in different tiers and different, both libraries are massive and they're going to continue to grow, right?
Right.
And that is the consistent between, or the constant between the two of them. You pay money, you're getting access to a digital library, as long as you continue to pay this reoccurring fee month to month. The minute that you stop paying that, access to that library goes away. I know we talked a lot about a lot of different things, but that's the gist, right, of those two services.
And that is a perfect segue into the first point, which is the multitude of different gaming services now. And this is the future. I'm going to go ahead and make
Absolutely.
that statement. There is no going backwards.
You heard it here first
So,
on Digital Ascent.
Yeah. If you haven't caught on to the trend now, basically everything I've seen and read is this is the future. And what you also touched on, which is streaming games.
Yeah.
And so now, now let's broaden out into PC, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, everything, right? So you've got...
Hey, Shaun,
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just gonna be contrarian here. If this is the future, where's Steam? Where's Epic?
Oh, we'll get to that. Yeah, I definitely think I can answer that. I can bridge that for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
because that's a serious question I have, because I also tend to agree that this is probably the future, but I also am going, well, if this is the future, where are the key players right this second, and why aren't they bullying everybody out of the market?
And for our listeners, just real quick, I want to differentiate before we go on fully, before Shaun takes it fully away here, because we've kind of blended some things here. And for people that don't know, when we talk about Game Pass and PlayStation Now / PlayStation Plus, we were kind of hyper focused on the subscription base of those and the catalog of games that you get access to. Hence Jordyn's comparison to, a gamer's version of Netflix or Hulu or whatever. When we jump into Steam and we're talking, talking about that, and we're talking about Epic Games and all that, they do not yet have a subscription platform where they offer a catalog of games. They are purely a digital storefront, as Matt was saying originally. And so we're kind of talking about two for right now, two very different things. We're talking about subscriptions and getting access to a huge catalog of games, a rotating catalog of games. So,
Yep.
You may subscribe for one game and then that game's gone in a month, to where on Steam, if you buy the game, as long as Steam sticks around as a business, you have access to the game, sort of deal. So go ahead, Shaun. I wanted to throw that out there before we even
Thank you so much,
started.
Brent. Yeah, I think we needed more of those clarifications, if anything.
Yeah,
right.
So thanks for sliding another one of those in there.
Yes, thank you.
So okay, this is where it's going to start getting, I think, a little spicy, because
Yes, sir.
on your topic of subscriptions, that one of the key points you made was, I may have that game for an X amount of time and then it may be gone. And I'm paying for a service that I might not want the majority of those games. So I'm paying for something that I may or may not use, or now I'm on a time limit. I'm going, okay, well, how much time do I have? I can't rotate through the games like I want to, because I hop from game to game to game based on mood, right?
Yep.
So it's frustrating for me, but I'm a bit of a fossil when it comes to this stuff, because it used to be you had a CD with a key and you installed it and then you had it and it's yours and you don't have to worry about it, which is why I primarily game on PC, because I can go to Steam, which does that for me, or I can go to GOG, or I can go to these individual resellers that I at least have the option of owning the game. Well, I'll put an asterisk by owning. But
yes, owning for the most part.
But yes. So I have access at any point in time. Whereas with Xbox Game Pass and PS Now, even though I don't care about it at all, or PS Plus, I may not get that game for the amount of time that I want to. And now I feel like I'm rushing through the game. So I'm getting external pressure from them. And sometimes they last for a long time, right? It's not necessarily a month exactly, but I don't like the external pressure
Absolutely. Yeah. It's that kind of like you're getting that FOMO. Like you pay the $15 a month or whatever, and you're like, cool, I have 400, access to 400 games or whatever, or hundreds of games at a minimum. But like now, if I start playing one, I now have the added pressure of finishing that within a certain window of time if I decide that I don't want to continue this subscription, right? And
Right.
I want to make something abundantly clear just very quickly, okay? The targeted audience for a subscription service like Game Pass is not me. It is also like not Brent. It is a very specific person. All right. Like I consider myself a very hardcore gamer. I consider Brent a very, very hardcore gamer. Matt and Shaun, you are also hardcore gamers, but in different rights, right? I don't know that you still fit into that targeted blanket. The targeted audience for a subscription service like Game Pass is somebody like my stepfather. Okay. And case in point, today is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the great fathers out there.
Happy Father's Day.
Hey, happy Father's Day, guys.
Happy Father's Day.
Guys.
Happy Father's Day.
Today, I bought my dad 6 months worth of Game Pass. He is somebody who loves playing video games, but he has not kept up with them in the last 10 years because of the growing price tag associated with them.
Fair enough.
And Game Pass is a perfect service for him. I've just given him 6 months access to this, library, and he's literally been playing video games all day, right? So, he, even at his prime, was only buying, 3 or 4 games a year. And when you look at the statistics, and I don't have them right in front of me, to be fair, right? But I'm throwing this out there. I think the last I checked was that, the average gamer is buying between 3 and 5 games a year. So when you look at a service like Game Pass that suddenly throws that metric in the air, you're suddenly not just restricting yourself to 3 or 4 games a year, because now you have a library worth hundreds. And to be fair, you could work on that, work through that library for a couple of years. Maybe, Shaun, just like you were saying, maybe you only play it for a month or two, or you use it for a month or two, and you play a game or 2 games, and then you decide it's not really for you. But that's the beauty of Game Pass. If you decide it's not for you, you turn it off, and you did not waste, thousands of dollars on the 400 games added in that library. You know what I mean? If my stepdad decides that he wants to continue using Game Pass, well, then he'll re-up for $10, $15. You know what I mean? And
which is nothing.
Using
that's nothing compared to a AAA title. Let's keep in mind that we're looking at $60.
Yeah.
What's Modern Warfare 2 coming out on as? 70, 75?
Exactly.
Like the price is going up. So.
And when you look at these services, right, with like Game Pass, where Xbox is launching every single one of their first party exclusives, and Xbox is trying to purchase, Activision right now. That's under review right now. So the next Call of Duty title after Modern Warfare 2 will not just be pay $60. Like if you're a Game Pass subscriber, guess what? Like you don't have to pay the $60 for Call of Duty going forward. I guarantee you those will be launch day exclusives, and you won't have to pay any extra money out of your pocket for, you know what I mean? To play the game, a AAA title.
I feel like I came away with you saying that Xbox Game Pass is kind of like for the casual gamer. And I feel like it's good for casual gamer, but I don't feel like it's good for just the casual gamer.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yes.
Xbox Game Pass gives me access to an enormous library. And more importantly, it gives me access to try games at zero risk that I would never try previously. Like was like two crowns or something like that, I know.
Yeah, there's a nice. They've got a nice mix of like indie stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then AAA stuff, and then AA stuff too that we don't see anymore. So
yep.
In a day where game demos don't exist anymore, very rarely do you see demos for games. Like just the other day, just a quick contextual, like, hey, because this mentality still exists. My wife came across the game The Quarry. Right, which is like a horror, you drive the action sort of. I think it's a 2K games. It's $60. She's like, I really want that game, but I don't know that I would like stick with it and actually play it. I wish there was a way to try it. And there's no way to try games like that anymore because 90% of these companies do not develop demos anymore.
Brent, you know what the crazy thing is I want to throw out there just really, really quickly. That is something that actually is coming back. And I want to give it up to PlayStation. I think they've kind of led the industry to kind of head back towards this area because one of the features at the premium tier for this new PlayStation Plus thing is, PlayStation is saying, hey, if you're a PlayStation developer, if you're a first party developer, we're requiring, I may have this wrong, but they are asking their developers in some way, shape, or form to produce demos. And I think that PlayStation is going to pay their developers an extra, stipend. Hey, we're not going to require you to make a demo, but if you want to, and you meet these, prereqs, we're going to give you X amount of money on top of what we were already paying you to ship the game. Xbox is also starting to do something, but I want to make it very clear that PlayStation, I feel like, led the charge. I think the charge on this, I think news broke for them first with the PlayStation Plus stuff first. And I do think that demos are coming back. That is something that I think everybody
Sony's been very good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw some nostalgia on you. Do you remember, I specifically remember that there used to be magazines that you could buy, and you get a disc in the magazine that you could put in. Yeah, that's exactly it. Mm-hmm. And you could pop it in. I remember my buddy had some demos, and we'd just pop them into the 360 or whatever, and just start playing them. And then we get halfway through, and we're like, oh well. All right. Oh man, good times.
It's good times, man. Good stroll down memory lane. I had a really banged up used Xbox, so those things were really hit or miss for me. But I did have
wouldn't always work.
I did have some good times. Yeah, that was like the Game Pass of the past. It was like
the past.
You know what I mean? A love letter to the future back then.
Yeah. So let's keep moving. So with all the clients, let's move to the more broad. We need to keep moving, but we see a lot of different services now. So you've got Steam, you've got GOG, you've got Epic, Battle.net, Origin, the multiplicity of things you can do with Xbox, both on PC and on console.
You can't forget EA Desktop to accompany Origin. Yes, that's right. You got it. Yes.
I don't.
Yes.
But so
it's a rabbit hole for another night.
Yes, it is. Let's not. I'd rather not. Mm-hmm. So what are the pros? I want to do a pro and con of these services.
The big pro for me is that you get a lot of games for a little bit of money on either side for whatever subscription, whether it's Sony or Xbox. You pay $10-$20, and now suddenly your library has gone from 100 or 200 games in some cases to well over 500 games in a lot of other cases. So man, I think that's great, right? Like when you tie a lot of stuff to a little bit of money, I think that's a big thing for me. The con is honestly, or obviously not owning the games. That's the big con, is now having some kind of, if I run out of money, or internet access, which is a big need for services like this. If I don't have internet or money, suddenly that great library is gone. And I understand, these companies are businesses, but sometimes people fall on hard times. And what happens to my games that I've been working on? Suddenly I lose access. So I guess that's one pro, one con on my side.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we'll talk about later is what are our rights and DRM, digital rights management, that kind of stuff worries me, and that's why having these. So having like 8 different clients to access all these games, right? It definitely.
Pain.
Yeah, it's pain, right? Like having to go to Epic to launch Fortnite, or having to go to Steam to launch this, or over and over and over again. I've got, and it eats up space too, like on my hard drive. And with games the sizes they are now, I have to have 2 terabytes in my rig minimum.
Absolutely.
In order to
minimum, dude.
If I'm a PC player, like wow, and then console, good lord, like you're cycling through games constantly, and so I mean, you can get bigger storage, right? Which is fine. But gone are the days of I have this game. I either install it or have it to play whenever I feel like it. And it's just an icon on my desktop. It's still an icon on my desktop for the majority, but I still have to have the launchers. It's not standalone, and it's eating up space, and So I agree. I think having the variety is really cool, right? Especially with the indie market. I am a big proponent of the indie games. Some of those developers, man, they do it right, and they do really great things, and it provides them a space to do it and get themselves out there. Whereas before, unless you had a big gaming company, you had struggles. So I love that. But again, having to, bounce between all these different things is a big con for me. And you can try and centralize them. So like one of the ways that you can do that is Steam, at least for me, Steam will allow you to import games. And
you can at least tie the shortcuts right to another launcher or something like that.
Gosh, with effort.
With effort, though. It's not straightforward.
Who has time for that? And it doesn't even always work.
Wants to do
sometimes
that?
Sometimes you have to launch BattleNet so you can launch StarCraft type of thing.
Exactly.
And that sucks
because that's DRM, right? It has to check in.
Let me ask you, and that was kind of going to be my question there, is now this is not for somebody who, and I own every single platform, right? So I like to think of myself as agnostic. I know I'm biased towards Xbox, but I've got everything here. So for me though, DRM is a term that, I did not really understand up until really today. But I'll say unofficially, I'll throw back to, when the Xbox One was announced, right? When that generation was announced for the Xbox, it was not a great time for the brand just because of the way that they had marketed the console. And one of the features I think that turned a lot of gamers off, Xbox had kind of taken a shift and branded themselves towards we want the casual gamer. We want the casual gamer. We want to put an Xbox in every living room and XYZ, right? They wanted it to be this entertainment hub. And because of all these different things that they were adding on, to the console for gaming specifically, I don't know why, but they had announced, hey, you're going to require, whether you own the game, whether you're playing multiplayer, whatever, your games are going to have to check in every 24 hours. And this was not something that had been it hadn't been standard in the console space. So the stuff that we're talking on as far as DRM affects every console, every game, and today going all the way backwards. It does not matter where you play. DRM is something that affects you, and essentially in layman's terms, and this is how I've expressed it or explained it to myself, right? Like you're buying a game, or when you pay that $60, price tag, if you don't physically own the disc, you don't really own the game. And that's where Shaun is kind of coming in with the player's rights. And I'm kind of simplifying some things here, but let's kind of slow that down.
Even with you owning the disc, you technically don't own the game.
You own a license.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So you guys were
in the way that it's worded. So let's do this. We're getting into the next topic. I want to finish up the pros and cons. So I'm going to give you my list and you guys can add, right? So here's some of my pros. Easy access. It is incredibly easy to get to these games. It's easy to purchase them. I install them. I play them. Not a big deal. I don't have to run to a store. I don't have to have a physical disc. I don't have to have, I used to have a CD case that I would carry my games around in with the packets or the pamphlets and the codes inside of it, because I couldn't install it if I didn't have the code. So it's ease of access. Love it. I also think that it drives a competitiveness, right? Which is good, in my opinion. If you have a multi-variety of services, they're all going to compete to be the best, which then makes us presumably a better product. I like the competitiveness. I think it's great. You get a variety of prices. So, and there's some overlap between these, right? These games. So GOG may have it for cheaper than Steam, or Battle.net may have something that is exclusive to them, or something that bleeds over that is cheaper than somewhere else. You know what I mean? Excluding the gray market. We're not going to talk about that. We're talking about specifically.
We don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, no, that's over there. We're going to keep that over there. So yeah, those are my big pros. Would you all agree that those are
absolutely
pretty much the standard
absolutely.
pros for what we're talking about as far as the multiplicity of clients, right?
Yeah.
So, cons. This for me, so like with the Xbox Game Pass, something that you said, Jordyn, if I lose internet, if I lose whatever, I don't got it for some of it.
Yes, there are exceptions to this, but yes, for the most part, that is correct.
Right. So, but it's still limiting, if I don't pay the subscription, if I don't pay, and this goes back to console subscriptions for live access, which has bugged me since it came out. That stuff drives me bananas, which is also why I converted to PC, because I grew up console. The management of all the games and all the installers, hate it. Like, I don't want to have to organize my stuff on my things to the point, because I'm a bit OCD, it drives me bananas having to client hop. I think that's a really big con, at least for me. I don't know what you guys feel about it.
If I can be honest, it doesn't bug me. And I knew that was probably going to come up with one of you, because I know that you guys primarily play on PC. Now, a lot of my gaming happens on the console side. So that's why it may be lost to me. It doesn't really bother me, though, like if I'm having to hop between Steam or Origin or GOG or any of the Xbox or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't really understand that complaint on the PC gamer side. You know what I mean? Not just you, Shaun, but across, just for me.
For the listeners, this is highly subjective, right? This is not a directive by any means. This is some personal preference here. But
and we're also, to further clarify on that, we are talking about situations such as Fortnite, which is developed by Epic, which happens to be exclusive to the Epic Games launcher. Right. We're talking about an EA published game that happens to be published by EA and ran on the EA desktop or Origin launcher. So there's a little bit of like, you have to understand who it's coming from to understand why that's the only place you can get it, because they're trying to push their own stuff.
Exactly. And so again, that decentralized management is something that drives me bananas, and the potential lack of access depending on certain situations.
Yeah, because the lack of internet argument could pertain to any of these platforms, really. I know we focused on it from like the Game Pass specificness, but and which we'll get into this. Yeah, we'll get in this on another topic, but sometimes these games are looking to reach out to a server to say, hey, does this guy own this game? Yes or no? And if you're not on the internet, well, you may not be playing that game that you already have downloaded. Regardless.
Yeah, and that's a great point that I think we've kind of slept on. Shaun, I apologize. I don't want to take this con from you, but that is, I think, a thing that we've overlooked, at least to this point, for a topic like this. This is a digital library. You have to download these games. So if you don't have super fast or reliable internet, this does not mean that I assume that a lot of us, living in a first world country, have pretty decent internet. I can download a game in an hour. You know what I mean? That's not the case for everybody. Sometimes people are having to wait 9, 10, 11, 12 hours. And I've definitely been in those cases before.
2 days.
Exactly.
It depends.
So maybe, hey, 400 games sounds great, but if it's going to take you 10 years to play 3 of them, it suddenly doesn't sound that great anymore. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that for like the sake of not sounding snooty. I get it. Not everybody, it's going to be applicable to everybody in different situations for a lot of different reasons. Yeah.
So I don't foresee it going any other direction. It's going to happen. This is going to be the norm. This is the norm. So unfortunately, I mean, so you can go, there are third-party applications that will centralize things. And actually GOG, their launcher does a pretty decent job of marrying your library and being able to auto launch Battle.net, like Brent was saying, or Epic, and run those games for you from a centralized platform. So there's ways to do it, but it's just adding extra steps. And so it starts to get messy. So again, it's not going anywhere. It is what it is. But I would be lying if I didn't say that it irked me.
Absolutely.
So.
As an OG gamer, Shaun, and I would definitely classify you as an OG gamer because you're within the window of being, I think, just within 5 years older than me, I think. But you would have played the same games that like my mom grew up playing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And not because you're old, but because that's all that was then. That's all that was around back then, right?
Yeah.
So you guys kind of all grew up on the same thing. So when we're looking at like the transition for the future, there is a part of me being, brought up as a gamer by OGs myself that is also irked, in the same way of not having that immediate, I know that this is mine because the laws say that they are mine.
Okay.
And now things are a little different,
Alrighty, Jordy, what a beautiful segue. So
I'm here for y'all.
Let's move on.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I appreciate it. So point 2. And this
I
is
do want to. I want to point out really quick. This is a long recording, but we skipped Matt for pros and cons.
Oh, we did.
I got a quick pro con for you.
Let's hear it, Matt, really quick.
Yeah, man. I do like the access that you get. I mean, there's just a lot of games. If it was the old school version that I remember going to the store, I mean, man, there's a million of those indie games that I'd never even see the box for, basically. And so I like the storefronts. I do not like the multitude of storefronts. It's very frustrating. So that's like a con right there. It's very frustrating having to be like, well, where did I buy this game? So this is a real story. One of my friends recently convinced me to reinstall a game that I thought was trash. It's because it is trash. I'm not going to run it through the mud. It doesn't need it. It knows that it's trash. Anyways, I went to go reinstall it, and you guys all know what game I'm talking about. And
I think I do. And I think, are you throwing me under the bus? Am I the friend?
No. And
okay, all right,
no, though, you know what? You deserve it too, dang it. And for that, thanks for bringing that up. Anyways, I had to go because that one too had the same problem. I had to go, well, where was it? Where did I get it? Where did I get this game? Did I get it from Steam? Nope, it's not in my Steam library. Epic? No, these games aren't even hosted on Epic. Did I get it from the Game Pass? Well, it's available on Game Pass, but that's not where my account is originally licensed through. So I'm going to run into licensing issues, like weird, funky email issues, right? If I start doing stuff like that. And, I mean, I have to start like launching, EA Desktop and Origin and, the Bethesda launcher and all these different launchers. Now I'm just trying to figure out where's my game. All I want to do is download the freaking game, man. The game that I paid for. I can't search for it on my computer because it's not installed yet. So I have to manually review all of these things. Sorry, I'm getting really riled up about this. Sorry, this really frustrates me. I really want a centralized system.
You're saying everything that I've just emotionally internalized.
Yeah, and then the other thing that kind of bothers me is I don't really love the like subscription service and recurring revenue model prevalence in our society in general. I see a lot of advantages to it. Don't get me wrong. There's a ton of them, right? But it never ends to some degree. I mean, yes, I get access to 100 games, but man, if there's 20 games in there that I really like, then I don't know. I guess I can go buy the 20 games. It's still probably cheaper for me to maintain the model, but
actually, and Matt,
I don't know. Whatever.
That is, you're exactly right. There's something. I feel like we could have started at this point, and that would have been a good stepping off point, but there is a very big reason of why subscription services are prevalent now, and they weren't prevalent 10 years ago. And I'd like to cover that really quick before we transition. But the reason that things like Game Pass and PlayStation Plus or PlayStation Now or any of the subscription services that we're talking about are even a thing, right, are because games without the subscription service do not make enough money to sustain these developers or these big companies, right? If you think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the process or the lifespan of a game, actually, we'll say pre-online, pre-Xbox Live, any of the mainstream online gaming experience. Back then, you pay the price tag for a video game, and what you pay for is what you get. Patching wasn't really a thing until, late 2000s, at least in the console space. I don't know if, games were patched on the PC prior to, when that became popular for consoles, but that's not really relevant. Sometimes was that a rare occasion?
Man, you could get some. There were some times that there like after the web became a thing that was readily available. At least I to my awareness, it was readily available. I was young, right? I remember patching back in the 90s.
The big thing, and I knew it was a thing, but it wasn't, and to the extent that we have it now. And the big point is, game companies were spending millions of dollars, and and the late 2000s, some of those got up to tens of millions, and then in 2013 GTA 5 was made, and the rumor on that was hundreds of millions. And since we know for a fact that amount of money has been spent on a lot of video games, that we played, growing up. And to us, it doesn't seem like a crazy thing. There may be things that we don't even think about, but to put a $60 price tag on a video game and have a gamer, in most cases, play that for 15 to 20 hours and then put it down and never play it again, never spend money on it again. These game companies were losing out on a lot of money. So they said, hey, how do we fix this? How do we figure this out? How do we put more money into our own pocket and keep the player engaged? And the first sign of that, or the first industry shift of that, was microtransactions. And obviously those are still a thing. I'm not gonna dive into that conversation, but I think the next
that's the topic we don't need to get into. Yeah,
exactly. I think the next iteration of that, of what Matt was saying, of this reoccurring revenue thing, how do we take money from the consumer without it seeming super predatory? It's tied to subscription services like this. And it really pains me to excuse my language, but take a shit on Xbox and PlayStation, because I love them very, very much. They, I spend a lot of time playing these video games, and video games are great, but this is really just another avenue in some way, shape, or form for them to get more money from you. And obviously those things are not inherently evil. It turns into revenue for the brand and what new features, not in all cases. I'm not saying, I just want to make it clear. I profit in some way, shape, or form from these services. So I don't want to be like that guy who's complaining and then I'm going to turn around and go play my Xbox, after this. But they are great. But the point of these things is to continue putting money into, platforms like Xbox and PlayStation's pocket, because that's how they sustain themselves. And I am very interested to see how this turns out, because Netflix is not doing great right now. And they are the godfather of subscription services right now. So it's, when you look at Xbox and, these services like PlayStation Now, Ubisoft, EA, whatever, what do these services look like in 10 years? Is this something that looks like it's viable now, but in 5 years we realize that it's not, or Xbox realizes that it's not, and suddenly Xbox Game Pass now costs $60 a month, to maintain? What
My
does
problem
this
is, where
look
does it
like?
end? Where does
exactly.
it end?
And where does it end? Right?
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. All right, so on to point 2. Well, I love talking about subscriptions because personally I hate them, but getting to the point of, you had said something about them not being inherently evil. I have my own thoughts about that based on the terms of services, right, that we have as gamers, given to us by the companies, right? So we have to protect, they have to protect their intellectual property, but this goes back to ownership. And this is point 2. Do we own our games? And what are our rights? I'm going to go ahead and just blanket put this statement out. We don't. We don't have a lot. There are entire law firms and lawyers out there for this very reason. So part of my research for this was to go through the terms of services for a lot of the big boys. So EA, Steam, Epic, GOG. And out of them, GOG's was the only one that I even remotely felt comfortable with. And so what I'm going to do is I took some quotes out of here just to sort of drive this point home of how little we have control over. So here's from Steam. It says, you become a subscriber of Steam by completing the registration of a Steam user account. Okay, that's fine. This agreement takes effect as soon as you indicate your acceptance of these terms. Cool. Further down, your subscriptions require the download and installation of content services onto your computer. Valve hereby grants you, and you accept, a non-exclusive license and right to use the content for your personal non-commercial use. This license ends upon termination, blah, 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 and it includes the license. It is not sold. Your license confers no title or ownership in the content services. So Steam says anything you buy, it's not yours. We license it to you, so you don't own it.
And this is, I'm assuming that something, just to kind of save us a little tiny bit of time and also for my own interest, I'm assuming that something similar rings very or is in each of the, the terms that you read across the different ones that you reviewed, is something along those lines.
Right. I did Steam because it's one of the big boys, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now I have multiple quotes here because I literally went through every terms of service. So this is the last bit of Steam, right? And this is the one that kind of made me catch my breath. It says, to the maximum extent permitted by applicable law, neither Valve nor its affiliates guarantee continuous, error-free, virus-free, or secure operation and access to Steam, the content and services, your account, and subscriptions, or any information available in connection therewith. So they don't even guarantee that you'll have access to your library.
Yep.
So that means if you don't have internet, if your account gets compromised, you can put in a service ticket. That's fine. But in the terms of service, it even says that you're liable for that as well.
They're essentially washing their hands of it.
Yeah.
Right.
They're washing their hands of it. And that, my Steam library, me and Matt had a conversation about this where we've got a lot of money, but you can get calculators, right? He had mentioned
a lot, dude. I have an insane amount of money invested in the amount of video games that actual plural video game titles that I own.
Exactly. And so it doesn't guarantee you.
Yeah, to your point, Xbox has had outages on their side. I can think of 3 major ones in the last handful of years that I've personally experienced where it did not matter what convoluted setup you had. It didn't matter what you did. It didn't matter if you had a hotspot. It didn't matter if you had internet access. Xbox's network was down, so my access to my entire library, whether I had purchased the games or they were downloaded through Game Pass, I could not play for hours at a time, 4 or 5 hours in some cases. And there have been cases where I've had buddies who've taken days off to play, little mental health relaxation days, zip down days, and boom, whole day's thrown in the trash because of an outage that lasted 7 hours. You know what I mean?
Right. Cough, Brent, cough.
Yep.
So here's what's interesting though. So, this basically is iterated through the terms of services for pretty much everyone. The interesting thing from GOG is, I won't read it for the sake of time, but basically they give you, if they fold, because Steam doesn't do this. Steam does not promise any sort of guarantee of even being alerted. You'll probably understand or know that they're folding, however unlikely it is. But GOG gives you 60 days to download your stuff and you can play it. It's yours. It's in their terms. So
it's pretty nice. It's the only one that does that, right?
From what I've read so far, and I could be missing some because terms of services are very difficult to get through. It's a lot of legal jargon. But basically, they're one of the only ones I've found so far that'll let you do that. And that scares me. That scares me that I'm paying all of this money and investing all of this time into stuff that could magically, at the wave of a wand, go away circumstantially. Ooh. And it just doesn't, it doesn't sit well with me.
It's very chapping.
it's not a sexy topic. You know what I mean? Like, this is not
No.
something where maybe as we're explaining this, right? Like, admittedly so, maybe there, you know, if you're a listener and you've gotten this far, maybe this is putting you to sleep a little bit. And let me tell you why this is important. You know, all four of us specifically have observed this transition in the gaming industry over the last 20 years. What it was when I, you know, was playing video games is not what it is today. And the same rings true for the three of you guys, right? And the fact of the matter is that it's Matt said something early on that kind of stuck with me, right? You know, you may think that, hey, you go to a GameStop or an EB Games or, you know, I don't know where you buy, a Best Buy, a Walmart or something, right? And you go physically buy that disc. And maybe you think you own it, but it's not that cut and dry. You're essentially buying a license, and today's, you know, industry, that license is required to check in with home base, whoever that is.
Yep.
Right.
And if you don't have an internet connection, you can't play that game. Regardless, it doesn't matter that you went, Xbox doesn't care that you went and bought, you know, you spent $60 of your own hard-earned money, or I'm sorry, $70 now. That's the new price tag for these games that are kind
Or for
of
the deluxe
rolling out, these
100.
AAA ones. Exactly right. It doesn't matter that
That's
you
great.
spent your hard-earned money on these titles, right? You are buying a license. And the minute that license cannot check in with home base, or something screws with the check-in process of that license and, you know, communicating with home base, you're not playing the games, whether it's an outage on your end or, you know, the distributor's end. And it's as simple as that.
Exactly.
That easy.
And that is
Yep.
a beautiful segue into the last topic. Point 3, DRM, digital rights management. And man, so let's kind of get some backstory here. DRM developed as a way to sort of protect copyright, but also control distribution of not only just games, but software and anything that's digital. The definition for DRM, so that it's a little bit clearer, is all form of access control technologies used to control the use, modification, and distribution of copyrighted works, as well as the systems that enforce those policies, regardless of how it affects the end user. That last portion is pretty interesting, regardless of how it affects the end user. So it's not just limited to the game space. It is intellectual property as a whole in the digital sphere. And it actually is interesting because it goes back into like the late 60s as far as what that looked like.
Interesting.
Which is wild. Yeah. If you look up the actual history, it was like late 60s, early 70s that, you know, they were starting to implement these ideas and talk about these ideas. And then it really started taking off in the 90s. So, and that's when, you know, the big internet boom hit and computers were becoming much more personal. But it's kind of a scary thing because, and I've heard it explained a couple ways. And there's a guy that I listen to on YouTube. He's a professor that basically is anti-DRM, and he's been around for a long time. His videos from 10 years ago, right? And he's talking about how DRM basically starts to divide the internet into two different things, which is free space, open distribution, creating culture from these open resources that we're able to handle and move about. And then you have the very much commercialized, lockdown, can't tamper with, can't distribute, can't do anything with internet. And so that's bled into every area of our lives now. And I'm not really, man, so I kind of get it from the standpoint of, yes, you need to protect your IP. You spend a lot of time and money developing these games and these pieces of software, but at the same time, it goes back to ownership. You're basically leasing them. You're paying for a license and that access in a very limited capacity. I don't know. I'm curious what your perspectives are, because I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted because I understand both sides, but the way they're implementing it now, like you said, Jordy, with these things have to check in before you're able to access them.
Yeah,
And
man.
so,
With it, and it's they all and they absolutely have to. They with the amount of things. I mean, our first episode we were talking about cybersecurity, and
mhm.
I know we kind of bridged that into gaming, but like there is a reason these things have to check in, and
Right.
Yeah.
that kind of sucks for us. But Shaun, you've made some great points. The distributors have to take care of their baby, their IP, their intellectual property. Like it's in their best interest and the consumer's best interest. So my I don't want to say like uninformed, you know, opinion, but like my thought process is DRM is as crappy as it is a much needed evil. And again, I say uninformed because I'm not up to date with like all of the cons that it brings to the table, but to me I
Right.
kind of
So,
understand like, you know, hey, I don't want hackers in my game, and I feel like DRM at a very high level can help, you know,
but
uh
here's the counter argument to that. What is it actually doing? Because you still have them and people still try. And so what is it doing
which
for
is
the
a great point.
consumer that's so right. So with the people that are trying to hack and, you know, pirate these games, they're going to do it anyway, and they're still going to find a way around it. And they do. Like, you can't tell me that people aren't pirating games, that they're distributing software. I know guys that pirate. They have bots that crawl the internet and, you know, grab stuff. So the DRM they have in place, okay, but it's really just kind of negatively impacting the people that are consuming it the way they're supposed to. So what is it really doing?
I feel like a lot of this hinges on, and I want to hear from Brent and Matt kind of on this. I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of hinges on the transition that we've kind of spoken about a handful of times throughout, you know, this podcast. The transition in gaming in general, like DRM maybe was not something that was needed in the gaming space. You know what I mean? If between 2000 and 2010, mainstream, you know, for everybody, right? For every title that came out. And now that we've really embraced, you know, as the human race, we've embraced, you know, the internet is really a part of who we are at this point in time, and our, you know, our up and comingness in the universe. I think the types of games that are being created, I think maybe it's needed. And I don't know. I'm just kind of I'm kind of throwing that out there. But Brent, Matt, eh, do you guys feel like the transition that we've made into this like always on space has impacted how much, you know, DRM impacts our experience as gamers? Does that question make sense? You know what I mean? Like we didn't have Modern Warfare 2s in 1999, you know? Uh
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I've gotcha. So imagine that you're sitting in, you know, you're the head of you know, your software development company, your game company, and you're sitting in front of the board that, that, you know, finances your company, and you're going, yeah, I don't really want to put in DRM. It's a pain in the rear end, and it hurts performance. Um, and the board's going, well, but then how do we protect our investment, right? How do we ensure that we get the best return possible, right? And I mean, you can say things like, well, but the game will run better, so people will be more likely to buy it. And you can make the arguments that the people who are going to buy are going to buy, and the people who want to pirate are just going to pirate it anyways. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing what what would qualify as sufficient diligence, then, um, you know, you're undertaking a significant risk with your investment. So it's, I personally find DRM to be unfortunate. I am not a personal fan as a consumer. As somebody who looks at things from a risk perspective, I think that the risk of piracy is significant. And if we can, like, if I was consulting a company and if I had an opportunity to delay the ability for piracy to execute for say the first 3 to 6 months, you know, man, most people who are going to buy it are like who are really into it are going to buy it the first few weeks, right?
Yep.
And then I assume sales drop significantly. I mean, I've not done these analytics, but my assumption is that by the end of the first month, the flood of sales is over. So if I can delay piracy for 1 month, then I can arguably say I've retained X amount of sales. And then, you know, it's up to somebody to do the fancy math about how much money that saved or didn't save. And, you know, how much money was lost because the review said, well, my stuff stuttered every 3 seconds, which is a real problem with some. Like that's real stuff that really happens with
Or
DRM.
the servers aren't online
Just
for you to
aren't available.
authenticate.
Just aren't available, man.
Right. And
You
so now
know,
you can't get in because your game is it can't communicate, or
It's
your
very
software can't communicate
frustrating.
and can't license. It's,
yeah.
I
It's very,
I understand
Very, very frustrating.
I understand you need to protect
So-
your IP, but man, it's like
You're punishing it sucks because
Yeah.
you punish the consumers that are paying the money. It's like ads on DVDs. Why the heck are you giving me ads on the DVDs? I bought your stupid DVD. Put the ads on the pirated versions. I know that's not a real thing, right? But, like,
Wouldn't that be nice?
That's how like stop. I bought your stuff. Stop punishing me.
right.
Gosh dang it. That's how I feel about DRM. I get it, but I
Brent?
also want to be like, stop punishing me.
How you feeling, sir?
I'd say that I align pretty much with Matt. I mean, I will say that, you know, back in the day, the pirating was substantial, but we're talking about two different eras too, because the way I look at it now, we get a lot of unfinished games these days, and I almost feel like it's harder for a pirate to pirate a game at this point than it was 10 years ago, because 10 years ago, the game was released and it might get 1, maybe 2 patches and you're done. Today, we're getting patches monthly. We're getting patches every 2 weeks because the games aren't done
standard.
yet.
Yeah, monthly at a
standard.
minimum. That's the standard.
And here's the thing, though. It's a strategy in some shape or form, too, because let's say the game releases and a pirate, you know, they crack that game. They've got a cracked launcher. They got a cracked DRM, whatever. The developer releases a patch in 2 weeks. Typically, they're going to have to recrack that game because now they can't play that game anymore. They can't play the new content that they released or the fixes that they released because as soon as they patch that game, it breaks the crack. They fix the crack. 2, 3, 4 weeks later, another patch comes out. They're doing it all over again. Tell me who wins in that situation. I feel like the developer's winning in that situation because they've introduced yet another inconvenience into pirating a game. Because it's not as simple anymore as just downloading that pre-packed, cracked game and being done with it. And so it makes it very hard for people to legitimately download something that seems, you know, that they make it look easy. Like, hey, this is a pre-cracked game or something like that. I know we've referenced stuff like Pirate Bay and stuff like that in the past. But just the point is that developers have made it very hard for that to even be a thing, simply because they are patching at such a regular cadence and they're releasing games that aren't even really ready for
they
production.
They require the updates, so it's a natural.
They require
deterrent.
the updates.
Yeah.
They won't function.
And it's kind of a strategy, man. I feel like part of it is it's like, hey, in addition to us simply just not being ready to put the stamp of, you know, completion on this thing, we also get the benefit of it's going to be much harder for people to steal this from us because we're always going to be iterating on it. And if they want the iterations, they simply have to buy it on a trusted platform, a trusted digital storefront, whatever the case may be. That's how you get the full experience of whatever you're purchasing. You're getting your money's worth over time, not necessarily at purchase.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so I have like a small call to action here. This is just food for thought. Okay, so if you're listening to this episode this far in, okay, this all comes down or plays into like games preservation, right? And I don't want to sit on a soapbox and say, hey, listen, the sky is falling, because it's nothing like that. But really what it comes down to is, video games are an art medium for our race as a whole. And they are not an art medium that can kind of be looked down upon as like, oh, this is just something that like the rebel kids do after school, right? Or whatever. I don't know who's saying that, but like billions of people play video games. That is, we can prove that. that many people, right? I think at a minimum it's like 3 billion people or something. So not quite half of the race, right? But enough people play it. All right. Video games are a way, just like with movies and music and TV shows and all of that, they are ways for us to tell stories that transcend time, right? You can get a little tiny snapshot into what was going on 10 years ago, right? And what the political climate kind of felt like by what was going on in certain games. You know what I'm saying? So this is important, right? It helps to tell our story. And I would very much like, my kids and my kids' kids to be able to grow up and experience the same stories that I hold, very dearly to my heart. That would be great to me, right? So anyways, small, tiny call to action. If this sounds like something that is important to you or pertinent to you, things like Game Pass and PlayStation Now or PlayStation Plus or whatever, any of the other, subscription services that we've talked about, digital storefronts, digital gaming as a whole, those things are great. They've helped advance, the industry, and we're moving into new spaces. Cloud streaming or cloud gaming, that is also awesome, but it does impact game preservation. In some way, shape, or form. All right. So if this is something that's important to you, go check out gamehistory.org. They do a lot of stuff on all things game preservation, studying where games have been, where games are going, and the best way to essentially preserve this art form, this art medium. How do we continue, preserving everything that this industry has brought to the table, and what is the best way to do that going forward? It's not really a hot topic, but it should be. Where is this industry space going to be in 50 years? And how will we look back on everything that's happened 50 years from now? Right. So, yeah, kind of in depth there, just a little tiny bit. But I wanted to throw that out there. This is kind of serious. It's kind of important. So
for the people that play the games, I mean, it's absolutely important.
Yeah.
You need to know if you're going to invest. The point of this episode, in my opinion, is to understand what you're doing with your money and the games that you're purchasing, so you understand and aren't blindsided. These things are a reality. They're not going to change anytime soon. What it's supposed to do is help you understand when you go, I want to purchase this game. You don't own the game. So it might not always be there. And if you really, really care about that game, maybe you should invest in the retro consoles to try and keep that alive. Or you preserve it in your own way, like you said. If you
there's
want
not really a solid answer.
There's not. There's games that I have for my son that I want him to play. So I bought retro consoles so that I don't have to depend on those things. It's just informational.
But like now,
it's to help you.
Where games, it's just like what Brent is saying, where games are like requiring those updates. What does that mean 20 years from now? How do you preserve something that may not be there? When you have a game like Destiny 2, who has, a third of his content, of his content being vaulted once a year. How do you preserve those things?
Don't.
You know what I'm saying? So again, that's another topic, but just... Yeah,
so shut it down. That'll be gone. Mm-hmm. So something like Destiny 2, one day they're just gonna be like, you know what? There's like 300 players left here. We don't care. Good night.
Good night. We're done. Yeah.
Yes, and that'll be it. And Destiny 2 will never be able to launch again.
Yep. There it is.
Alrighty. Boom. So I think that's a good point to wrap up. Is to summarize, there's big changes, and your rights as a gamer right now, unfortunately, are you're leasing your games. And so if you want to keep certain games, maybe want to think about that. I'd highly recommend, if you genuinely care about your rights, go read the terms of services. I have the links to them. They're going to be in the show notes. I'm also going to link that YouTube video from, his name is Lawrence Lessig, from 12 years ago, actually. And that'll also be in the show notes. It's like an 8-minute video, but he's a super smart guy, and he kind of brings up some good points. So I'd recommend looking that up as well. But yeah, that's it for this one. So
check us out on Discord.
yeah, come to our
Tell us
Discord.
what your
We're happy to
thoughts
talk
are.
about it.
At Digital Ascent.
Yep.
I would love to hear from our listeners. What do you guys think about DRM? Do you guys use subscription services? And if so, do you guys have any favorites? Did we miss any by chance? Is there maybe something good about DRM that we missed? I don't know. Everyone's got different perspectives. Come to our Discord, drop by our forum, come by our under construction website, digitalascent.tech.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Ascent podcast. Make sure to check us out on Twitter, Discord, and at our website at digitalascent.tech.